The wedding rehearsal dinner at the Fairmont Grand Hotel was in full swing when my sister Victoria discovered the problem of what to do with me during her ceremony. 40 relatives and wedding party members filled the private dining room, celebrating her upcoming marriage to James Blackstone III, whose family owned the largest software consulting firm on the West Coast. At 26, I sat quietly at the singles table, still treated as the family's perpetual disappointment, the sister who'd dropped out of corporate life to work for what everyone assumed was some struggling tech startup. "Ladies, we need to discuss tomorrow's logistics," Victoria announced, standing beside her elaborate seating chart. The bridesmaids gathered around with champagne flutes, all accomplished professionals with impressive careers. "The ceremony seating is perfectly arranged," Victoria continued, "but I just realized we have an issue with Sarah." All eyes turned toward me as I continued eating my salmon quietly. "The problem is," Victoria explained, "Sarah doesn't have a date and she doesn't really fit with any of the professional groups we've seated together." Madison, her maid of honor and fellow marketing executive, nodded sympathetically. "What about family seating?" "She'd be awkward there too," Victoria replied. "James's family includes venture capitalists and tech executives. Sarah would feel completely out of place trying to discuss careers she doesn't understand." "She can help with coats since she has a no date," Victoria decided with satisfaction. "We can set up a coat check area near the entrance. Sarah can manage that and still feel included." The bridal party laughed appreciatively. Ashley, another bridesmaid, clapped her hands. "Perfect. Sarah gets to be helpful without the pressure of making conversation about business achievements." I felt the familiar sting of being relegated to service roles, but this time was different. My phone buzzed with an encrypted message from my CTO. "Final acquisition paperwork signed. Announcement goes live at market opening." "The wedding program lists all the bridesmaids and groomsmen," Madison noted. "Should we add Sarah under special thanks?" "Just list her under staff," Victoria replied casually. "It's technically accurate, and it avoids awkward questions from James's family about why she's not seated with accomplished guests." Through the windows I could see additional luxury cars arriving. A silver Bentley pulled up to the valet station. "Oh, that's probably Richard now," Victoria said excitedly. James's father finally made it in from Seattle. Richard Blackstone emerged from the Bentley with confident bearing. At 62 he was a legendary figure in tech, having built Blackstone Technologies from a garage startup into a global software empire worth $3.2 billion. "Victoria, you should introduce Sarah to Richard while he's in a good mood," Mom suggested. "He might have advice about finding stable employment in the tech sector." They had no idea that Richard Blackstone and I had been in acquisition negotiations for 6 months. The cocktail hour transformed the rehearsal dinner into an impressive display of tech industry success. Venture capitalists and software executives mingled over premium drinks while discussing market trends and investment opportunities. I remained at the singles table, monitoring encrypted messages while Victoria worked the room with practiced efficiency. She moved between groups with confidence, introducing James to relatives and showcasing her ability to navigate business conversations. "Sarah, honey," Aunt Patricia approached with charitable concern, "you look so serious. Are you worried about fitting in tomorrow?" "Not particularly," I replied, watching Richard Blackstone enter with 2 other men I recognized as prominent venture capitalists. "It's understandable," she continued kindly. "All these successful people can be intimidating when you're still finding your professional footing." My phone chimed with another message from my CTO. "Blackstone Technologies board approved final valuation. $2.8 billion confirmed. Press release ready for your approval." Perfect timing. "Excuse me," I told Aunt Patricia. "I need to handle something urgent." I walked toward the entrance where Richard Blackstone stood discussing quarterly projections with James and 2 other executives. He was an imposing figure, the kind of man who'd revolutionized entire industries through strategic vision. "Mr. Blackstone," I said, approaching their group. "I received the final documentation. Everything looks ready for Monday's announcement." He turned toward me with immediate recognition and obvious pleasure. "Alexandra. Perfect timing. I was just telling James about our acquisition strategy. The conversation around us gradually quieted as other guests noticed Richard Blackstone's animated discussion with the woman they'd assumed was working coat check. James, Richard continued enthusiastically, I don't think you've been properly introduced to your soon-to-be sister-in-law. This is Dr. Alexandra Morrison, founder and CEO of Morrison AI Solutions. James's expression shifted from polite confusion to growing alarm. I'm sorry, what? Alexandra has built the most innovative artificial intelligence platform in the industry, Richard explained proudly. Blackstone Technologies is acquiring her company for $2.8 billion. The silence that followed rippled outward through the cocktail hour as more guests stopped their conversations to listen. $2.8 billion? James repeated weakly. The acquisition announcement goes public Monday morning, Richard continued, making Alexandra one of the youngest self-made billionaires in tech history. Victoria appeared beside us, her face cycling through confusion, shock, and dawning horror. Richard, I think there's been some misunderstanding. Sarah works for a little startup. She can't be. Victoria, Richard replied with gentle surprise. Alexandra's company has revolutionized machine learning protocols. Her artificial intelligence systems are integrated into Fortune 500 companies worldwide. More guests had gathered around our conversation, creating an impromptu business conference. But she's listed as staff in the wedding program, Madison whispered urgently. Richard's eyebrows raised in polite confusion. Staff? Alexandra is about to become Chief Innovation Officer of Blackstone Technologies. She'll be my designated successor for leading our artificial intelligence division. Richard Blackstone's business instincts immediately recognized the awkward family dynamics unfolding. Alexandra, I hope I haven't created any complications with your family arrangements. No complications, I assured him. Just some misunderstandings about my professional situation that are now being clarified. Victoria found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Sarah, you're really selling your company for billions of dollars? Not selling, Richard corrected with pride. Alexandra negotiated a strategic acquisition where she retains operational control while gaining access to our global infrastructure. She'll be running our entire artificial intelligence division. James looked like he might need medical attention. Alexandra, when Victoria said you worked for a tech startup. I founded one, I clarified. Morrison AI Solutions has 847 employees across 12 countries. We hold 63 patents for machine learning innovations that are reshaping how computers process human language. The venture capitalists who'd been discussing market trends now pressed closer, clearly recognizing my company's reputation. Dr. Morrison, one said with obvious respect, your natural language processing patents. We've been tracking their impact on the entire AI sector. Richard pulled out his phone and showed the screen to James and Victoria. This was taken last month at the Global AI Summit in Switzerland. Alexandra was the keynote speaker, addressing 3,000 technology leaders. The photo showed me on stage in a conference hall filled with prominent tech executives, clearly in a position of authority and expertise. Victoria stared at the image with growing devastation. But you never told us. You let us think you were struggling. I told you I was developing artificial intelligence systems, I replied calmly. You heard computer programming and assumed I was barely employed. Every family gathering for 3 years, I continued. I've mentioned my company's growth, our international expansion, our breakthrough innovations. You've responded with career advice about finding stable corporate jobs and suggestions that I consider more realistic goals. Richard was consulting his tablet, pulling up recent business articles. James, your family might be interested in this. Forbes just ranked Alexandra as the 47th most influential person in global technology innovation. The wedding guests who'd been pitying my lack of professional success now realized they'd been networking with one of the most powerful figures in the tech industry. The announcement Monday morning will make this official, Richard continued. But Alexandra's artificial intelligence platform is projected to generate over $800 million in revenue next year alone. Mom appeared beside our group, having overheard enough to understand the magnitude of what was unfolding. Sarah, honey, why didn't you correct us when we assumed you were unsuccessful? Because correcting you would have required you to listen, and you'd already decided what my life was worth. Richard's business phone rang insistently. Alexandra, That's probably my board calling about the final press release approval. Should we handle this now? Of course, I replied professionally. As we walked toward a quieter corner to discuss billion-dollar acquisition details, I could hear Victoria behind me trying to explain to confused relatives why the staff member was suddenly commanding the attention of every successful person in the room. The wedding ceremony proceeded with significantly revised seating arrangements. Instead of managing coat check, I found myself at the head table with Richard Blackstone and other technology leaders who attended as my colleagues rather than Victoria's guests. The wedding program was hastily reprinted to list me as Dr. Alexander Morrison, Chief Innovation Officer, Blackstone Technologies, rather than understaff. The change required Victoria to acknowledge publicly what she'd spent 3 years refusing to see. During the reception, Richard delivered a toast that highlighted the family's spectacular miscalculation. To James and Victoria and to the Morrison family for raising such an exceptional innovator. Alexandra's work will impact millions of lives through the artificial intelligence systems she's created. Victoria's perfect wedding became a celebration of my professional achievements rather than her marriage, though she eventually learned to appreciate having a tech billionaire in the family. The wedding venue still tells the story of the ceremony where the staff member turned out to be a billionaire tech executive. It became a cautionary tale about assumptions and treating all guests with respect. The singles table where I'd been relegated became a symbol in our family, a reminder that where you're seated doesn't determine your worth, and that the quietest person in the room might be changing the world while you're making assumptions. Victoria learned to ask questions before making judgments, discovering that her unsuccessful sister had built something more valuable than any corporate career she'd imagined. The coat check assignment became family legend, representing how completely wrong assumptions about success can be. The wedding program listing me as staff was framed in Richard Blackstone's office as a reminder about hidden talent and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances when evaluating potential business partners. The acquisition of Morrison AI Solutions became one of the most successful tech mergers in industry history.